Welcome to Rooted and Rising, a soulful podcast hosted by Dr. Cheri and Ellice Boone. Join the conversation as Dr. Cheri and Ellice explore the transformative power of holistic healing from the inside out. Together, they guide listeners through the deep work of reconnecting with their roots, uncovering the unconscious wounds that shape us, and rising into the fullness of our higher selves. So please, welcome the hosts of Rooted and Rising, Dr. Cheri and Ellice Boone.
Oh, hi, and welcome
Hi.
to Rooted. Oh, go ahead. I'm here now. Hi, and welcome to Rooted and Rising. I am Ellice Boone, and I am here with Dr. Cheri.
Yes, welcome. We're excited to be here today. And we've got a great topic, don't we? At least I'm excited about this.
I am
Yeah.
too. Yeah. Why
What
don't you
if,
tell us?
I just have to ask a question before I let you do that, because I'm really curious about, um, what if today we're going to talk about parts, and what if there's parts of ourselves that that you've judged, that you maybe silenced, that you could have even forgotten about? What if you learned that they are actually key to your healing?
Hmm, great question.
you
Mhm.
know I'd like that question to kind of just float around as we talk today, that as I talked before, really, is there any aspect of ourselves, any of that tiny prism that we should cut out of who we are? And I can tell you right now, the answer is no. We need to embrace all of ourselves, and so even the forgotten, the silenced, or the judged part.
Mhm.
And so
Absolutely.
I want us to dive into all aspects of ourselves and talk about the different parts. And as I said in the last episode, there is we have that ancestral, we have our family system and our community, but we have parts inside of us. And it's talked a lot about in internal family systems, and they have their formula. And there's other formulas that I like to use to really engage the imagination, to encourage people not to be afraid to look at parts, and also not to assume that all parts, that there is a negative or positive. There is some rough parts, and there is some parts that are self-saboteurs, and even maybe pretty dark in our opinion. But there, we know opposition in all things. There cannot be light without dark. And so I want you to kind of keep that in mind as we look through. Um, we do things for a reason. Now, we may not have a mature reason. We may not have a sound reason. We may not have, it may be, like I said, a saboteur reason. But in our minds, in this, if we keep things in context, we want to survive. We want to be part of, to belong, and we want to be loved. So if you can think about the reasons that we do things, and our parts do, the parts show in different ways, it's really with that intention. And so if we can recognize that, okay, I do that because I want to be playful and joyful, and I want to be able to express my anger, and I want to speak my truth, and I want my creativity, but I don't know. But then we are feeling fractured and not quite there. And so with this in mind, as we explore the parts, just think, okay, be curious. All my parts are important, and can I look at all of them? Sometimes we're scared. Sometimes villainize our parts so much that we're scared to look at it. And so we create things like amnesic memories and dissociative memories, and these are all we get just fractured, and not knowing we're doing it, and we got not recognizing we can bring it back together, and we can integrate all this and become whole again.
Yes, thank you. And I know we both really enjoy IFS, which you might hear listeners us speak about often because we both use that in our practice, and that is internal family systems. And this is a method of finding out what these different parts of ourselves are, identifying them, and then, like you mentioned, Dr. Cheri, integrating them into our lives. So instead of them being these fractaled parts where they're acting on their own accord, or maybe we're acting as one of those protector parts or those saboteur parts, we're able to give them space to be seen and heard what their message is, because they do have a job, something important. They were put in place for a reason. And so to understand what those parts of us are trying to tell us, and then from that place, implement a relationship, bridge that gap so that they're not acting separately from us, or that we're not acting without consciousness of what we're doing, but with more intention, and becoming who we want to be, and aware of what our actions are. So yes, that's kind of what we're diving into today. A little intro to parts work and what that could be like. And as we have said in our other episodes, we want to practice that listeners can do at home, and something that they can follow along with. So if you're watching this live, and you can do a space that's quiet and private, please do so. And if you are watching the replay, then I encourage you to pause the video and make sure you're set up in a space that feels quiet, private, safe, that you can lay down, close your eyes, or sit up, whatever you feel comfortable doing. Just take that time to create this next 5 minutes for yourself. So, once again, last week we did a visualization, and we're going to move into another type of visualization. And we talked about the importance and the power of connecting with this right brain. Um, a little bit of feedback on your end, Dr. Cheri, I think, coming through. Let's see if we can meet that. Okay. So last time we spoke about the tree visualization, and this time we're just going to take a moment. If you listeners, again, are at home, hopefully you found a quiet space that you can be in and comfortably sit or lay down and close your eyes. And I want you to take a moment, as always, to connect with your breath. That's the first portion. Connecting with your breath and feeling what it's like to be inside your body, just here and present in this moment. And if it feels good to you, deepen that breath with a deep inhale through the nose and an exhale through the mouth. Perhaps lengthening that breath just a little bit, deeper through the nose, long and slow. Exhale. And if your eyes aren't already, go ahead and close them. Noticing your body, noticing the weight of it, and coming back to focusing on the breath. And now in your mind's eye, I want you to visualize a hallway filled with closed doors. You're walking through that hallway, and each door could lead you to a part of yourself that you have hidden or left behind. As you walk down the hallway, one door catches your attention. Come to that door. Take a moment to gently open the door. Notice who's inside. Notice how old they are. Pay attention to details about their appearance. Notice not only what they look like, but also what you sense that they are feeling in this moment. In this mental realm, you can speak with them with or without words. So notice any sensations within your body. Notice any visuals you receive. Notice any emotions or feelings that come up. Stay here with them. Let them give you their message. Take in their message and what they're saying through words, visuals, or feelings. Noticing any sensations within the body. And making sure that you're not trying to change or force anything here. Just allowing it. Listening. And now asking a question to that part. And that question is, what do you need from me right now? See if there's any small way that you can offer them some or all of what they need. Staying in this space, seeing if there are any other thoughts or feelings that arise. Seeing if there is anything else this part wants to hear from you right now. Let them know that you see them. Let them know that you hear them. And breathe here, soaking in just a few more moments, tending to any other parts that need to be tended to. And when you're ready, promise them that you'll return, walk out the door, and close it gently behind you. Now coming back to your breath, noticing any sensations in the body. Breathing here. And when you feel ready, you can softly open your eyes. Thank you for being a part of that. I'd like to invite our listeners, if you are watching the replay, to take a moment and pause here and spend as much time as you need tending to yourself, kind of soaking in that moment. And as always, I encourage you to pull out a journal and take some notes on what that experience was like. There's no right or wrong answers. Even if you didn't meet a specific part in this exercise, just thank yourself for being open to doing it, and perhaps make an agreement with yourself that you will try again next time and go just a little bit deeper and open just a little bit more. So can come back into this space when you are ready. And yeah, thank you for being a part of that. Dr. Cheri, is there any insight that you have about this practice or this part's work after doing the
Well,
exercise?
aside from it was beautiful, thank you. It was really beautiful. And yes, not to make this a Cheri story show, but I found myself walking down the hallway to a green door, and green is, ironically, it has kind of evolved into my favorite color. So I thought that was interesting. But I went in, and I met my 10 to 12-year-old, and she was holding a guitar, and it was the music is is an omission in my life. I learned the guitar, and I loved playing the guitar, and I love the fact that my fingers were strong, but I had experiences, to not go into great detail, experiences where became aware that I don't hear beats and I don't have coordination for music, and so I think I shut that off. And so it was a message of bring it back. And be as clumsy as you need, but bring it back. And I could go back and visit and hear her play and celebrate her, because that part needs to be celebrated and needs to come out. So that was what I got from the exercise, which was it's an unresolved wound that I can visit and celebrate and bring back now. So thank you, Ellice, and that was great.
I love
And
that.
thank
We
you.
have a break right now, but let's come back and I want to comment on your share. Thank you so much.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorick, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorick has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hi, welcome back to Rooted and Rising. We just had a really beautiful visualization, and Dr. Cheri shared a little bit about what her experience was with that. And we encourage the listeners to comment and write to us about your own experiences. We can talk through those as well. But I love that, Dr. Cheri. So you mentioned you saw a green door, you went through and saw this 12-year-old version of yourself with a guitar, and it was sort of this reminder to not let that part of yourself go. Was it to like embrace the musical side of you, whether it was clumsy or imperfect or whatever, but just to be with that side, not to forget it?
Right. That was some of my wounds was I'm a poor singer. I'm not, I'm not in tune. I don't keep a beat when I dance. I don't remember, the words of a song. And so I shut that all down, including listening to music. I just shut it all down for probably decades. And so it was a message of, I'm missing out on joy. I'm missing out on joy, and I'm keeping a wound open that I don't need to keep. And that I just need to go back and be, engaged in the creativity of it and the playfulness of it, and I'll have joy. So in that little bit, so much came to me, and so thank you. It was like a lot that I wasn't looking for or expecting at all, and so that's another thing. I had no agenda, and it just came, and so I will be doing all that. So it's really great. And this is to me maybe another example of the beginning steps of what integration is about. What I learned, I'm not whole without music in my life, whether I'm listening to it, singing with it, with my, off tune, dancing in my own style, no matter what the music is, I can do that. And what's great about my stage of life is I don't really care, but I did care, and that was part of my development, of being trapped in my, what I've talked about before in I think our first episode is the pseudo self and the higher self. And the pseudo self is a false self. It's the conditioned self. And this is a good example of me being trapped in my pseudo self and not knowing it, just wanting to be part of, make everyone else comfortable. If they're not comfortable with being off tune, I'm not going to sing. If they're not comfortable being, stepping on their toes, I'm not going to dance, and but then I shut my own light down, and I didn't find a way to integrate it. And so now my challenge is to embrace that part of me, clumsy or not, and see how it can be fine. And who knows, maybe I can keep a tune now. Maybe I can dance and hear the beat. I don't know. And so now I get to go explore that. And that is where the integration becomes, it starts to enter. And my showing up for that now, following through with this is what's going to be. I can be a big talker now and then not have music in my life. And so now I have to, and I won't reach my higher self. So I feel like part of becoming whole is reaching to our higher self. And this is a choice now that I get to make. And this is a choice of, do I want, we take a puzzle, and this is a piece of puzzle that's missing out of my picture of life. And so that's a whole. And so now I can go and put that piece of puzzle in there and get a little more clarity of the picture. And a puzzle's not fun if if you see a piece missing here, a piece missing there, that's the first thing we put our focus on is the missing piece. We don't focus on the picture. We don't even see the picture sometimes because we're looking at the missing piece. Like, where's this piece? It's forgotten. Okay, I gotta throw the puzzle away because we're missing, piece number 1,000. And so all 999 pieces go down in the garbage. That is not what we want to do. We want to go find every little piece and really get to know that part of ourselves, no matter how ugly we think it is, how unconventional it is, how out of place it is. We want to embrace it and give it the opportunity to transform and integrate and release the pain and angst that's attached. Because for me, the pain and angst is simple. It dampened my self-esteem, my self-confidence, along with not hearing the beauty of music. It me, in ways that I probably still haven't really looked at because this just happened. So it's beautiful. So this is what I'm getting from the power of parts. And as we go further and talk about parts, it can happen very fast like this, and it can happen. We can have lost parts that we don't know how to identify. And like I talked about, that we pushed out. The irony when something like we can just completely have amnesia over it, and we can talk about that because it's too much of the time. And so they don't go. Our parts don't fracture, so we don't meet them. They fracture so that we can go back and find them when we can meet with them and do the work. It's always there for us.
Yeah. And I think you were the perfect example of someone who has done extensive parts work throughout your life and really gotten in touch with all these different parts of yourself. And yet you still came and met something new today. So it's just to show that this work is ongoing. There's not an end part, but a continuous curiosity and an openness to exploring our inner landscape and all of the things and pieces of us that we carry inside. And there isn't, some goal that we're getting to, like, okay, once we have this parts work done, then I'm complete as a human and I can finish.
Right.
We're continuing this process, and it's beautiful to see someone go through a short visualization like that and have such deep meaning. And that does come from all of the inner work that you've done throughout your life and the work with clients and the experiences you've had. You know just how to open up, just jump right in, crack it open, pull out the meaning. And I know, knowing you, that you will utilize this, you will take this into your life. So that is an important piece as well. So we can have these small or even huge, expansive, profound experiences. The question is, how do we implement that into our daily life? How do we take the pieces of that perspective shift, or that paradigm crumbling, whatever it was, that disintegration of our belief systems, and then how do we rebuild from there? And how do we make sure that those parts are being heard going forward in the future? So hopefully, if our listeners did go along with this visualization and they got to meet any part, hopefully that's just a little window into what you can learn about yourself, and maybe an invitation for some future parts work and getting to know those different areas and personalities and protector parts and creative parts and all these positive and negative, but like so many pieces of us that create us as these dynamic humans that we are. We're very layered. So yes, it's an invitation to continue on with that. And again, like I said, if you went through the hallway and you opened the door and there wasn't anything there in that moment, or it was hard to understand, just be patient with yourself. There's so much more to explore, and try again. Definitely try again. So, because Cheri is the example of what it can be like and how simple it can be to have such profound meaning.
And also
Um,
know that if you go down the hall and there is no doors, or there is no door that opens that you feel inclined, that there's purpose behind that. It's
mhm,
not that I just didn't do the exercise. I failed the exercise. I'm not concentrating enough. I'm not focused enough.
mhm,
Don't do that circus talk with yourself. Be curious about that. Say, there was no door. There was no, I didn't open a door. I opened the door and there was no one in there. And just like, okay, just let it be. Don't put meaning to it. Don't create a story behind it. Just let it be and say, okay, I'm curious. Next time I go down the hallway, what will happen? And
mhm,
just because our parts need to come forward when we're ready to embrace them. I think my part came forward because I'm ready now to embrace it. And so not because I've done all this work,
mhm,
I've done all this work, but I think I think it's more, it's because I'm ready to bring music into my world. And so I think that it helped me help me understand how come music hasn't been my world, and help me remember what part has been taken care of me in that way, because I wasn't ready to deal with that wound. And
yeah,
we don't want to deal with our wounds before we're ready,
mhm,
and so we have to have the capacity, and we have to have the safe container, and integration can't happen without the safe container. And part of us building up is towards our higher self and getting rooted is and so that we can be our own safe containers. And that
mhm,
sometimes that takes time. And for me, it took lots of time and maturity. So embrace every stage.
mhm. Yeah, thank you. And that was so important to hear. And I think it's so beautiful to realize how we can take time. We can be in different stages, and every stage is the stage we're supposed to be in that moment, So don't try and force it or rush it. And like you said, there's no right way to do it. Whatever you visualize, there's like a trust in our inner knowing and a trust in our body's wisdom that comes into play here, that we
Very
can
much.
really just accept what it's showing us and be curious and open to it. And
Very much.
that is right there. It's not about, I'm going to do this right. I'm going to be an A+ student at this visualizing, that really won't give us what we're looking for. But surrendering to the experience, being open, and then being curious about whatever the outcome is, that's how the work is done. So it's less control and more relaxing into and opening.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that's really beautiful. And I love, again, the wisdom of the body. I just want to reiterate that point. We are so wise, and our inner self knows when we are ready to meet that part. It knows when we're ready and have capacity to go deeper into our healing. So trusting that, really
Yes.
trusting that. Yeah,
Yes.
so
Sure.
beautiful. Um, wow, we got so into that moment. I'm like, okay, where are we here in our interview? Okay, I was going to ask you a question about your clinical work, and what have you seen that causes people to leave? So, kind of, how does this begin? So, we're telling our listeners. Maybe we come back to this after our break, because I think this is a rich question that we can really dive into. So, after the break, we'll talk about what you've seen in your clinical work that causes people to leave these parts of themselves behind, these fragmented parts or these hidden parts. So we can come back to that in just a moment. And for now, we'll take a little break from our sponsors.
Thank you.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Hi, welcome back to Rooted and Rising with Dr. Cheri and Ellice Boone. We were talking about, IFS, family, internal family systems work, parts, and how that, why that work is important, and why learning, how it helps us learn who am I,
Yeah,
which is so vital today.
so important to find out more about our roots once again. And I think right before the break, we were asking a question, which is, Dr. Cheri, how have you seen in your practice with clients and your clinical work, what is it that causes people to leave these parts of themselves behind? Why are they exiled or, behind a closed door? Well, how do they get to that place?
Right. And so, we can, it's a lot what we've talked about already. It can begin early in life with our needs not met, the basic needs of love, safety, belonging, that security. If we don't have that, that can cause us to fracture because it's beyond our capacity to manage. And so we start breaking in parts. And then if life is hard, like we have traumatic experiences, we lack survival strategies that we can't manage what's hit us. And that could be people hurting people. It could be nature hurting people. It could be economic issues. We know the ramification, wars. And then it could be family roles. There can be a lot of drama in family, and there can be versus safety and security, which our family, that can cause us to fracture. And then and life situation, and then sometimes we can choose to leave aspects of ourself behind. Like I left my music behind. It was, did some big event happen to cause me to do that? No, several small events happen. And so it could be, so we may, shut our voice down. We may walk away from our truth. We may shut our emotions down and not be able to express joy or anger. And this parts of ourselves, because we're emotional beings. So we're going to have an anger part. The anger doesn't go away. We may just fracture it apart. The joy doesn't go away. We just fracture it apart. And so reasons that the parts show that are created.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And thank you for speaking to that. It doesn't have to be this big traumatic event that, fragments these parts of us or exiles them. We can have simple things over time, like you said, with self-confidence, with being told, about music. And so that slowly but surely made that part of you shrink back until she was no longer maybe there. And I think the reason why it's important to bring those parts forward is there can be some intense parts. Let's say they're carrying intense emotions and they're shrinking back and they're hidden for whatever reason. At times in our lives, those parts can come forward when they think they have a job, when they think they need to protect us. And they can actually sort of take over our mental capacities because we're not connected with them in a way that we can communicate. They're a hidden part. So when they come out, it's almost like we're acting out of our own core belief systems and our own true self. And we're acting purely based on this part, which can be very confusing because sometimes that part is not caught up to speed on what the rest of us is doing at this stage in life. Maybe they're caught back as a 16-year-old. Maybe they're caught back as an infant. So the way that we are acting based on that part doesn't really align with who we are as a full person today. And so that's why it's really important to get in touch with those lost parts so that they can then be heard and then either integrated into our lives, or they can stop their protecting. They can realize and understand that they no longer need to be coming in to save the day, to rescue us from whatever it is they feel we need to be rescued from. So that's what I
And then
think
the
is so.
other aspect, yeah, another aspect of that is we go back to the body keeps the score. If
Mhm.
the parts stay buried and dormant or buried and they get displaced in the body, then our body can react with dis-ease.
Yeah.
And it can get illnesses come up and autoimmune disorders and cancer. And, there are a lot of times that those are not just environmental and in our genes, we create them with dormant parts unknowingly because we are fractured still. And so, because the body does remember everything and it keeps the score and it can't contain the toxicity sometimes if we don't let that part know that part is even there, stirring in angst and not feeling safe.
Hmm. So true. And this is such a common thing, even in small ways. I feel we all are guilty of repressing feelings.
Oh,
We don't want to feel that. It's too much. But what does that do within our bodies? So bringing it back to what you're saying, our body keeps the score. This is creating dis-ease in the body. So our bodies can't function properly because we are pushing down these emotions. Well, emotions are made up of energy. And that energy doesn't just disappear, it gets stored. And what does that look like when anger or hurt or sadness or grief that's not being processed and allowed to release is just being held in our bodies? What does that look like? What does that feel like? Well, it feels like a whole bunch of people in our society that are on a bunch of prescription medications for a bunch of problems that they're experiencing in their body that
mm-hmm.
very well could be related to emotional and mental distress. So it's fascinating how much we disconnect all these parts, like our body and our mind and our spirit. They're all different. No, they're all connected. They're all acting from and because of each other. So being aware of that really shifts a lot. It gives us more motivation to meet these parts, to dive a little deeper, get to know what we're putting on the back burner, what needs to be uncovered. And yeah, it's not that scary too. I think some like watching you go through that practice was really beautiful to me because it shows that it can be a really beautiful, positive experience as well. It doesn't always have to be the icky, yucky stuff, and it
Right.
can be that too. So
Yes. Yes.
there's a lot to discover.
Yes. There is.
I had another question for you, Dr. Cheri, which was, what do you notice? So before I ask that question, I'll say what we're aiming to get to is the whole version of ourselves, right? Welcoming
Right.
all the
Right.
parts, the
Right.
good, the bad, the challenging, really making space for them, understanding why they're there, how they got there, and then allowing them to have a place, whatever that is. Maybe it's a new role that they're able to take on because they can rest their protectiveness because they've been made aware of how we're functioning in the world today, that they no longer need to be this protector part. Or maybe it's making space for them because they have something to say that's really valid that we can actually apply in our lives. So it's getting all of those parts, welcoming all those parts, communicating with all of them so that we can be our most whole selves. So with that being said, as clients start to do this, because this is a process working with clients in IFS, it's step by step, it's exploring, it's teasing out these different parts and what their personalities are and why they're there. So as you go through this with clients, what do you notice happens as they begin to welcome these parts, as they start integrating these parts into their lives? What have you seen from
You
this?
know, so through IFS, they've created this internal system dividing. There's basically three parts. Our protectors, our managers, and our exiles, which are usually the wounded child and all the different parts of the wounded child, and that's great. And as a map to like start identifying different parts, because you have to know before you can integrate. You have to know the different parts. And exercise, that the challenge with that sometimes with some clients is it emphasizes the the trauma parts, unfinished parts, and sometimes clients aren't ready for that. And so we again, it's meeting us where we're at and kind of understanding what we're ready for. And so another way I like to do it is introduce the Russian dolls. The Russian dolls, the stacking dolls.
Yeah.
We take all sometimes they have like 7 or 10 of them, and you undo the and you have them undo the dolls and then they map out, put the dolls out and map out and identify this is only 7 to 10 parts. It's not all parts, but kind of like identify the different parts and how they relate to each other in a visual place. And it doesn't have to be just the wounded parts. It's all the parts, and like the higher self, as well as you can start with the higher self, the pseudo self. It can be the one that just exiled part could be exiled self, but not ready to break it down yet. It could be the mother. And so that's a fun way to like introduce, because we really want to. There's no one right way, but we want to start where we will engage in this work and engage our curiosity, because we can want to, but we can feel like shut down, not knowing how to get there, how to tap into that curiosity, because it doesn't feel safe to even get to know ourselves. A lot of times, especially when there's complex trauma, we can blame ourselves for all that. I should have known better. I should have done something different. It's because I'm ugly. It's I should have had more power. And we make up stories, part of our survival mechanism to do that. But then to tap into that, it's like, I don't want to know that part. That part's ugly. I can't go there. I think I'll break. And so we want to be able to manage all that, capacity and make our own container safe. And so sometimes not getting so much into the trauma parts, just identify the different parts, different roles we play, and see how they interact, and which one we choose to be the biggest one and which is the smallest one. It's like, okay, if the exile is the biggest one, okay, maybe later on I need to go there, and that will be good enough. And then we what happens is we can stop judging, and we start just listening.
Mm.
And the listening itself and the curiosity itself begins the healing. We don't have to understand. We can just listen with open ears, and that begins the healing process. And then we recognize, this is a time, this is a moment, this is a situation, and this is a symptom, not who I am.
Mhm.
Begin the healing.
Yeah, so beautiful. I've seen that. I was thinking of a client as you were speaking, who really got to know this little girl inside of her around 5 or 6. And we will message often and she'll tell me experiences. Now, it was a lot of deep work that she went through, because that little girl went through some really intense sexual abuse. So it's very understandable why she was very hidden for so long. And as she went through these parts of herself and got to know that little girl, she would notice that in her life, she was reacting to situations with really strong body sensations and feelings. Like that little girl was like stopping her and trying to protect her from going through other unsafe scenarios. And as we started talking to this little girl and really letting her know that she was safe in other situations throughout life, and we're talking about normal daily situations of like getting into a car and driving somewhere, these things that some people can have debilitating fear and they're not sure where these things are coming from, this like massive anxiety and body responses, because this part of them is really coming out in this moment. So what's really beautiful is that she went through such a wonderful process of getting to know her little girl. And now she has a daily practice of checking in with her. Her daily practice, like, what do you need? And listening. That listening piece is so important. And secondarily to that, she's now reaching out to me, telling me all the fun things the little girl wants to do. So now in her 60s, she's experiencing all these things that as a little girl she didn't get to, but now feels safe doing. And it's absolutely beautiful to watch that full spectrum happen in someone's life, to like really be able to embrace the little girl, have open communication with her, and now be living this joyful, playful life of the things she didn't get to experience. So it's really powerful work. Okay, I know we have another break coming up, but we'll end it there and we can come back to more.
In a moment.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
Welcome back to Rooted and Rising with Dr. Cheri and Ellice Boone. Ellice, that was a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that before the break about how IFS can really impact us in real life, and it's continuous work. It's I love the fact that she visited a little girl, and then see her that little girl and her evolve from really trauma to joy and playfulness and growing in life. And as that little girl grows, that's when the integration happens. And so that is a really beautiful thing. Now, ISF is a therapeutic modality, and it's great therapy work. To go find a clinician who does IFS and do that work is really important. And also, we can start it at home. There's ways that we can safely take care of ourselves. There's more, as I say, we heal the inside out. The inner healer wisdom is in there, and tapping into intelligence can be done. And so, at least I like to ask you, how would you suggest for listeners to begin this work at home?
That's a good question. Like you said, an IFS trained therapist is wonderful. So you can look for that in your therapist. As well as at home, what a lot of things that I like to give clients to do are on their own. So sometimes we're doing this work in person, but sometimes I'm giving them, a worksheet. You can find stuff online, internal family systems worksheets. There's books that have been written with the permission of the author and creator of IFS. That beautifully weave in somatic work along with IFS parts work. So all of them are very similar in nature. Their visualizations to get in touch with your parts, their journal prompts to really explore more. So all of these things that sort of take us out of that brain, that overthinking brain, and put us into our subconscious so we can dive a little bit deeper into who those parts are, what they have to say to us, and explore. And there's no right or wrong. You can do any type of practice like this at home. And I promise you, you won't leave thinking, why did I do that? I got nothing out of this. If you go in with an open mind, you will absolutely gain something from it. And like you said, it's an ongoing practice, an ongoing work. So just encouraging all the listeners to take some time to get to know a different part of themselves this week. And I think it'll be really beneficial.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Yes, we can take care of ourselves and start the work, and then we know if we need to reach out to get more help. Why does this matter? It matters because this work does help us reconnect to the deeper truth of who we are. Who am I? And it calms. Actually, evidence shows it calms our nervous system, and it taps into the subconscious, which I love, is that cosmic area, and that inner wisdom. And so then we recognize, okay, so much of this is made up symptoms, survival things that we can release now and open our emotional capacity, our emotional energy. And we're no longer stuck into the survivor mode or the self-saboteur, or are just paralyzed from living life. And so what happens, as science has shown, that our PTSD symptoms are reduced. Again, our emotional capacity is increased. As we play with these parts, like the visualization you gave, it activates emotional memory. And that did it for me. I remembered, my emotionally, and so I kind of shut myself down emotionally. And so that starts to rewrite the brain. And so this is where, if we add the exercises you talked about, the journaling, it increases our cognitive clarity. And seeing something you said earlier, it quiets the critic, the inner critic. We are so busy overthinking sometimes, and I think we're the worst critics to ourselves. And it can also rewrite the negative conditioning and maybe cognition of, I should have known better. It's like, no, I was 5. How could a 5-year-old know better? And so I'm projecting my adult thinking onto that 5-year-old, and I just need to embrace that 5-year-old and reassure, no, you shouldn't know better. And now you're safe because I'm here, and I survived that. We survived this. And so so now we can create anything we want to create. So this is the wonder of really what we're capable of and who we are.
Yeah.
And
And
so
that safety piece is so important too, because, right, if we can just reassure those parts that they're now safe and let them know that this version of us, this version today, actually has way more information than our 5-year-old self did, that in itself creates trust and safety. And that allows them to maybe set down their protection job, or maybe come out a little bit more and show more of who they are. So that's an important piece, is creating that safety within ourselves. I think I wanted to reiterate
and this is
that.
and this is a way we get to know ourselves, right? And we get to know that right now we say fragmented, we are a bunch of stories, but they're not. But and like I was talking to one person, and it's like it's even writing a story. Sometimes we write a chapter here, a chapter there, a chapter there, and our life becomes a bunch of chapters, but not a volume, not a whole, and not interconnected, and it's not going from beginning to end. Doesn't make sense. But we can now, if we visit each part, and see that there's a relationship with each part. And we meet the part where they're at and remind them, oh, you're only 5. And look at me. I'm an adult now, and you survived this. And so you don't need to be in pain anymore. You don't need to be scared anymore. And you can hold my hand, and we can walk together into this. And you can experience what it feels like to mature and grow. And because we always do mature and grow. We all, the one constant in life is change. That's where hope is. So I hope, all of you, really sit down and be curious about the complexity that you are. We're curious about complex PTSD, but be curious about complex human being, and be the human you are, and revisit, what steps you're taking to root and rise. And so do the internal work, do the journaling work, and if there's anything more you want to know about this subject, or you'd like to have more, want to learn more, want to share your story, please let us know. Contact us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, or contact us through Alternative Place to Turn. Show up for our show, and ping in, and we will definitely want to hear you and welcome you and share with what you have to offer.
Yeah, take
So
this time out for yourself, and then do the practices. And one journal prompt I'll give you, listeners, is when you do your free writing, start with this journal prompt that says, the part of me I've been afraid to welcome is, and then free write for 10 minutes and see where that takes you. And I think that's a wrap, Dr. Cheri. So until next time, stay rooted
and keep rising.
This has been Rooted and Rising with hosts Dr. Cheri and Ellice Boone. Through honest conversation, clinical insight, and creative reflection, Dr. Cheri and Ellice will empower you to reclaim your voice, your vitality, and your vision. This podcast is not about quick fixes. It's a return to deep knowing, gentle unraveling, and lifelong integration. Tune in each week, Wednesdays, 12 noon Eastern.